New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
New Thought Media Network is excited to present Divine Science Everywhere, Fridays at 2 p.m. Mountain Time and 4 p.m. Eastern. Come explore a modern experience of divine science with Reverend Joy Fletcher, Reverend Jeff Radcliff, and Bishop Durrell Watkins. Join us as we open our eyes to divine science everywhere we look. Fridays on New Thought Media Network.
Welcome. It looks like we have our auxiliary co-host.
Lily wanted to come say hi to everybody. Say
Hello,
hi.
Miss Lily. Hello.
Look at him.
Well, this is Divine Science Everywhere, and I'm Reverend Joy Fletcher. And we're so happy that you could join us today, all of you. And I am privileged to be the president of Divine Science Ministers Association, a lifetime member of INTA, a member of Divine Science Federation International, as well as Anton. And Reverend Jeff.
I'm Reverend Jeff. Divine Science Minister since 2022, but I was ordained back in 2011, I think, with International New Thought Ministries. You will find me active on Facebook. Look for Giatti Ministries, Giatti-Ministries. That's GIATI-Ministries. And I do a little bit of everything. I'm on the board with Reverend Joy on the Divine Science Ministers Association, as well as being on the board with Bishop Durrell, who's not here today, with Divine Science Federation International. So I've got my little hands into everything. So it's nice to have you all with us today. I am looking forward to our guest. I can't wait for you to meet her. But before we begin, Reverend Joy gives the best centering moments ever. And so we'd like to take some time to do that right now, just to settle in and prepare for the show. Reverend Joy?
Thank you. Well, we are being called in this special time to really practice the truth that we know. As one of my mentors, Reverend Alola James, used to say, is pray, meditate, and practice all the truth you know. And we certainly have that opportunity now. The world is just hungry to feel that sense of peace and oneness. So with that, let's begin to gently settle ourselves. Wherever you are, just stop for a moment and allow your body to just soften. Just be here now. Allow your breath to slow and become deeper. So with each inhale, we receive. And with each exhale, we release. We live and move and have our being in the omnipresence of the divine, of God, of the unnameable. It is in all, through all, as all. within us all. We center in this awareness of this omnipresence, knowing that divine life, divine love, divine peace is here right now. It's never apart from us. The only sense of separation that occurs is in our own mind. We filter appearances and experiences to our own mind, our own consciousness. And there are moments it seems that we have spiritual amnesia because we truly know that we know deep within us is this perfect place, this center of peace and remembrance of our unity with one another and all life. H.B. Jeffrey taught, God is the one good. And because God is the one good, goodwill is not something that we struggle to create. In fact, this is the will of God, to express itself as itself, which is oneness, unity, love, peace, harmony, joy, life. And Emma Curtis Hopkins also taught, there is no power but God. Therefore, there is no power opposed to God. So as we know God is perfect life, perfect love, and perfect substance, we are at one with these powers, this power, the allness, the omnipresence, the oneness. Divine wisdom governs our decisions. Whenever we observe or find ourselves in the midst of turmoil and disappointment, we can shift our awareness back to our at one-ment with one another and God. It matters not if it takes a few moments to return to this awareness. When you notice that you have slipped, just shake it off and turn instead to that peace at the center of you and within me, within one another. This is a time that speaks for the calling of non-violence. It is time to speak up against violence. But first, it must come from within ourselves. We must be at peace. Practice this peace. And we are receiving so many opportunities right now to remember, to practice nonviolence in our words, in our thoughts, in our actions, and instead apply a healthy dose, an unlimited dose of love and peace and faith in the most perfect outcome, faith in divine order. Peace begins within each of us. Just as the song says, let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. It doesn't mean that we wait for our circumstances to change, or we expect someone else to change or circumstances to change, but rather, right now, in the midst of whatever, peace is here, love is here, perfect life is here, wisdom, and all the attributes of God the good, omnipotent. This truth is mightier than circumstance, than any appearance of disruption. Good always prevails, always. So as we close this time together, let us remember, vow to take vow within ourselves, to begin right now in this moment, and commit to nonviolence and peace and love. And so it is.
And so it is. Thank you, Reverend Joy. You didn't send me out of my body like you did a couple of weeks ago, so that was good. But I do feel that calm centering whenever you bring us into this moment. So thank you for that. We've got luminaries to talk about. That's usually something that Bishop Durrell does, and he's not here, so we're going to pick up his luminaries for today. And I know that we just had a real brief chat about this, but I'm going to let you handle the bulk of it. But we did talk about Martin Luther King last week. This week, that we've got somebody very special to talk about. His birthday was just the other day. The Reverend Dr. Ernest Holmes, who founded the Science of Mind movement, but he was a divine scientist. He was ordained by Agnes Gaylor in Seattle, Washington. I think was that 1917?
I don't remember the year.
I don't remember the year. He would have been about 30 then. He was born in 1887. But I know that he started writing he had something published in 1919. So I'm kind of thinking that maybe he had gotten his ordination just prior to that. And there's a picture out there on the internet, and if I had a way to show it to you, I would, of him out on the beach in Venice Beach. And one of the people there, besides Nona Brooks, who is Divine Science co-founder, was Agnes Gaylor. And I think that's probably the only picture I've ever seen of her. So there's that. Our very first New Thought luminary is Reverend Dr. Ernest Holmes. And you have others for us as well.
I do. H.B. Jeffrey, who I really enjoyed and reading his books, was a devoted student of Melinda Kramer, Emma Curtis Hopkins, and Thomas Troward. And he worked closely with Emma Curtis Hopkins on the teachings of high mysticism, and he later taught classes grounded in her work. Among his writings are Spirit of Prayer, Fruit of the Spirit, and Coordination, texts that emphasize the practical application of spiritual consciousness in daily life. I remember when I was studying at Unity to become a licensed Unity teacher, I wrote a book report about one of his books. And I could, when I read the book, I remember it just felt like the consciousness was coming up from the pages. You know, some authors touch me that way, and it just, I loved it. He taught a foundational divine science truth. God is the one good. Thus, goodwill is the will of God manifest in us. So, I like that. Have you ever read anything by H.B. Jeffrey?
I've read bits and pieces. I've never sat down and read an entire book cover to cover because I have got a stack of books about 15 feet tall of to be read, and I've read a little bit in each one of them. I just need to get the discipline to crack open the book and read it from one cover to the other before moving on to the next one.
I'm reading books simultaneously, and I have little bookmarks and
the one that I'm currently really interested in is this one, and it's Agnes Sanford's The Healing Light. And I did not know anything about Agnes Sanford until a few weeks ago when she was one of our New Thought luminaries that Bishop Durrell talked about.
Yes.
So, because she was not technically New Thought, but her ideas are so New Thought that we have to claim her.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's a wonderful thing about sharing these different ideas, and hopefully people will be inspired and research and maybe read about some of the things that we bring up. So that's great. That's great. Yes, were you going to say something?
No.
Okay. And another luminary is Mohandas K. Gandhi. And he was a global teacher of nonviolence and spiritual courage. Through his commitment to nonviolence in thought, word, and action, he helped lead India to independence from Great Britain. His life and teachings are especially remembered during the season for nonviolence, a time of recommitment to peace, compassion, and conscious action. Though Hindu, Gandhi admired the teachings of Jesus and embodied the universal truth that love and nonviolence are spiritual forces capable of transforming the world. When my husband and I attended the Parliament of World Religions a couple of years ago in Chicago, that was a lifetime dream to be able to attend that. We were eating dinner in one of the restaurants, and there was a lady that was seated with two other ladies. They finished the meal, and we were invited to sit with this one lady. And her name is Cindy Lucas. And we discovered that we had a lot in common, and she actually is a producer of documentaries, and she was presenting a documentary about Gandhi's wife called The Accidental Activist, I believe. And it was fascinating. So perhaps we could have her as a guest on our show. I've been thinking about that. She also produced one about Gandhi and other topics, and they've been shown on PBS. So when I think of Gandhi, I think of her. That was nice. Yeah. Yes.
And ironically, it will be next week. Will mark the 78th year that he actually left the planet, but he left a legacy, like Martin Luther King that we talked about last week or the other week. He left a legacy that will never ever be forgotten. So yeah, here's to Mr. Gandhi as well. Well, thank you for handling the bulk of the luminaries, Reverend Joy.
Sure.
We're going to take just a real quick break, and then we're going to come back with our special guest. And I'm so excited to talk to Reverend Maureen Hoyt. So stay tuned. This is Divine Science Everywhere on New Thought Media Network.
Please help us say thank you to all of our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Center for Spiritual Living United Life, Sunshine Cathedral, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Universal Joy Center, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Home Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. On behalf of New Thought Media Network, thank you, and please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, come be you. Come expand your spiritual journey. Join us for Just the Talk, Sundays, 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Experience Unity Kitchener and Ottawa. Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Unity of Garden Park, New Thought Philadelphia, the Sunshine Cathedral, Unity of Savannah, and the Home Center for Spiritual Living. Come unleash your spiritual potential with New Thought Media Network.
What would Louise say? Join us every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Hosted by Reverend Martine Bernard. Explore the wisdom of Louise Hay. Brought to you by New Thought Media Network. Dive into Louise's teachings. Experience healing and empowerment. Reverend Martine shares insights. Connect with a contemporary audience. Unlock your potential. Transform your life with love. Embrace positivity and healing. Join our vibrant community. Ready to join us? Let's spread love and wisdom together. Please like, share, and subscribe. Only on New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
Welcome back. And I am so excited to introduce our guest, Reverend Dr. Maureen Hoyt. And Michael, you need to bring her in. There she is.
Yay!
Reverend Dr. Maureen Hoyt is an ordained religious science minister. She's got 2 doctorate degrees, a Doctor of Religious Science and a Doctor of Divinity. She has celebrated just last May 32 years in ministry. She served as a practitioner for 36 years and coordinated Creative Thought Magazine. And oh, how I miss Creative Thought Magazine. Coordinated that for 8.5 years as an editor, proofreader. After she tried to retire, and she's not done very well at that, after her pulpit retirement in 2016, she went back to her roots in editing and proofreading. And so she does personal coaching, counseling in a mentor capacity. She teaches science and mind classes. She is a guest speaker at local centers for spiritual living and unity churches in her neck of the woods, which is in California. And her first book, an anecdotal memoir. How fascinating. It's going to be out this year. It's currently at the publisher. The working title, and I love this, Off the Yellow Brick Road and Back On Again. And she was also hired in 2024 to be the editor-in-chief for Imagery International's magazine, Imagine News. So, like I said, you tried to retire. You failed miserably at that. But I'm so happy because you are giving such wonderful service to the world. So thank you for retirement.
Yes.
And we have a standard question that we usually ask our guests, and so I'm going to ask you. You were not born into New Thought, correct? You came into this at some point. How did you find it?
Well, I was living in San Francisco at the time. I was a recovering Catholic, and but I had such a sense of the God presence within me, even at 12 years old, when the minister of our Catholic church, where I was raised in Kimberley, British Columbia, questioned me about having a conversation with God, and was very adamant that I couldn't speak directly to God, that I needed an intercessor. 12 years old, I said, okay, that's not the God that I know, because that God is within me. And I had that sense of it. So fast forward to 1968, my friend dragged me kicking and screaming to hear Neville Goddard at the Masonic Temple
Awesome.
on California Street, way at the top of California Street, next to the Fairmont Hotel, or close to the Fairmont Hotel. And as he began to speak in his lovely clipped British accent, the place was packed. There were over 2,000 people there. And the energy was electric. It was just electric. And I thought, what have I come to? Is this some kind of cult or what's going on here? Anyway, I began to listen closely to what he was saying. And in the process, discovered that he was talking about all the things that I already felt, already that I knew intrinsically. And I began to cry, and I couldn't stop crying. And I said to my friend kept saying to me, "What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?" Well, you can't talk when somebody's giving a speech. So we waited until we got back out and we're walking on our way home. And I said, he was talking about everything I believe in. And if there were a church that taught this, I would be there in a heartbeat. So fast forward to 1973, I moved to Southern California. My husband and I married my husband, and I was going to Weight Watchers. In this Weight Watcher lecture, never talked about recipes or anything. She just talked about change your thinking and change your life. You know, all you have to do is do one day at a time, one step at a time kind of thing. And one Saturday after the meeting was over, I said, how do you know this stuff? Because it sounds so much like this guy I heard in San Francisco a few years ago. And she said, well, who did you hear? And I said, nothing. And she went, oh my God, like that. And she said, you want to come to church? Or first she said, are you churched? And I never heard that turn of phrase before. And I said, what do you mean? Do I go to church? And she said, well, do you practice a certain religion? No. I said, no, I was raised Catholic. But I said, I'm open. And so she said, come to church with me on Sunday. And my kid's dad said, you take your own car. You're not going, if you have to escape, then you should have your own car with you. So, well, I didn't escape. Because that Sunday, William Hornaday was at the pulpit, and the 150-person choir at Founders, directed by Dr. McNeil, was there with this color gowns with the red accents, and I knew I had found my home. I knew I found my home, and so that was the beginning of my journey with the science of mind.
That is so awesome. Now, I grew up in West Virginia, and there was no New Thought anywhere around. And I discovered it in the let me go back just a little bit. I did know of Unity because when I was a kid growing up in the late 60s and into the 70s, Unity had a television feature called, The Daily Word. It was just a little 30-second with celebrities reading the Daily Word. And that's, and my grandmother always had the Daily Word in the house. Fast forward, got into a Unity study group that eventually collapsed. But there was no really any New Thought anything. So that's why I treasure my friendships with the ministers of Unity and Science of Mind and Divine Science, because you all got to meet people that I had no idea that I came into late in life to discover. You mentioned William Hornaday. You got to see Neville Goddard. I was always so fascinated by our late colleague, Reverend J. Scott Neal, because he knew everybody. And so it's just awesome to be 6 degrees or 3 degrees or 2 degrees away from some of these people that I've read their books and heard about them, but never got a chance to meet. So how cool is that?
It is very, very cool. Yes. I was blessed to visit Founders Church at one point, and struck how beautiful it is and the consciousness.
Yes,
So,
it is beautiful. And speaking of Founders, once I became a minister, I would trek down to Founders every Tuesday morning to take classes with Arthur Chang, because he taught both the Old Testament and the New Testament. And raised a Catholic, the Bible wasn't a pivotal book that we used as Catholics. We had our own catechism. You know, it was very, let's see, it was very confined in it's just the Ten Commandments and that's it kind of thing. Anyway, Arthur taught, Dr. Arthur Chang. There were 40 people in the class on any given Tuesday morning. That's how big an audience he drew. And we would go into class with Bob Marley on the radio that he had on his CD player that he brought with him. And so it set the tone for the class. There was an opening treatment, and he began to teach. And everything I know about the Bible, I learned from him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, him and maybe Rocco Errico and maybe a few others. John Shelby Spong for sure. So I think one of the beauties of being in this teaching is that we never stop learning. We are always, going for that next book, the definitive book.
Mhm.
I just bought the new revised edition of the Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton. And he was our keynote speaker at Asilomar a few years ago. And he stopped mid-talk in the middle of the stage because you could hear a pin drop in the room. And he said, I am preaching to the choir. He said, what I wrote in this book, you people already know. That was right. So I got the revised edition to see what else he put in the book for this new reprint. We never stop learning. Isn't that true?
Yes.
That is true.
That's right.
And like I said earlier, when I was coming up into my spirituality in West Virginia, I depended on what I could find online.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the first things I found online was Dennis Merritt Jones had a talk show, and you were one of his guests.
Yeah, he was my ministerial teacher.
Yeah. And so that's how I first got to know of you.
Yeah.
Then I went looking online for anything I could find. Maureen Hoyt. There's not a lot out there. We need to get some more content out there.
There is now. My son said to me, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 months ago, he said, Mom, have you ever Googled yourself? I said, no, why would I do that? And he said, you should see how the hits you get on Google. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? I'm a legend in my own mind, I guess. I don't know.
Well, it is all mind.
It is all mine. Yes, it is.
One of the very first things after I saw you and Dennis talking, and Dennis just turned out to be a very good friend as well. So, there's again that 6 degrees of separation. But there was a talk you gave at Asilomar. I guess you had knee surgery.
Yes.
But you came out on a crutch, and I was here. I've needed to. Let me rephrase that. I have used a cane for several years. It's part of the necessity of me. I've always kind of sort of beat myself up on, well, if you were a better New Thought student, you could heal yourself and you wouldn't need this cane anymore. And then here comes Maureen Hoy out on the stage with a cane. And I thought, well, if Dr. Maureen can do it, so can I.
Yeah.
And you made it okay for me to not be ashamed to be using that cane.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's the healing too.
Yes, it is.
Acceptance.
It is.
Acceptance. Yes.
Acceptance of the condition not controlling us. As Ernest would say, we don't deny the condition, we deny the power the condition has over us.
Right.
And I have 2 knees, 2 hips, My children find it really funny when I get a cold or anything, because I rarely ever get sick, but I get knees replaced and hips replaced and gallbladders taken out. And, the various things that I've removed or fixed in my body. But the funny part of it is after both knees and both hips, there was no doubt in my mind that this was my way to heal a condition that in and of itself, because in the 60s I skied, and the motions of skiing, when I went to the orthopedist, I was thinking it was about my weight, and he said, actually your weight has helped you go through this for a longer time than you would have if you were really skinny. You would have gone in and had this fixed a long time ago. But what he said was, it just depends on the activity. He told me to come here, and there was a woman walking down the hallway at the doctor's office. Tiny woman. She was a tennis player. She had both her knees replaced and hips replaced. And he said, it's the motion that you use to ski that probably, we're not intended to either walk like that or play like that. So that was very real. He was a good doctor. I like that man. I like that man a lot. So not denying the condition, but denying the power the condition has over us, right?
And with the medical intervention too, didn't Ernest say that God is as much in the pill as he is in the prayer?
Oh, I say that so often to people, you have no idea. I say we're not Christian scientists. The Christian Science gave us the basics of what we have in divine science and in religious science.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Ernest Holmes, the Melinda Kramers, the Nona Brooks, the Fillmores, they all realized that not everybody needs to be a Christian Scientist. We need to avail ourselves of the healing process. And then when we had 5 deaths at the Granada Hills Center for Spiritual Living between Christmas and New Year's. And when I said to my writing class, because they were sad that a couple of the people that they knew had passed away, and I said, for those people, the ultimate healing is death. Mm-hmm. And I said, that may sound harsh at some level, but really, I had to get that during the AIDS crisis. Sure. Because my dad passed away from AIDS from a tainted blood transfusion that he got. They didn't filter the blood in 1989, or no, when was it? 87 when he first contracted AIDS. So I had a greater sense of, that there wasn't medication for those HIV positive people. And ultimately, they moved on to the next expression, their next journey in consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, Reverend Joy and I both share a background in end of life care.
Yes.
Working doulas. And I remember one of the people that I worked with, who was actively dying. She was in the dying process. She was probably several hours away from it, and her daughter was in the hospital, and the lady stopped breathing. She was a do not resuscitate, and she died. Mm-hmm. And her daughter went screaming into the hallway for people to come help her, to bring her mother back. And later on, I was talking to her. I let her have her emotional moment and just was there, for her. Later on, she said, I wanted her healed. And I said, is it possible that this is the way she got that healing? She's home wherever she is now. She's not suffering. She's not in pain. This, I think, was her ultimate healing.
Yeah.
And that stopped her. And she goes, I'm so ashamed and embarrassed at how I acted. And I said, don't be. You were in your emotions and it's okay. But yeah. So when it comes to our conditions, acknowledge them, like you said, yes, but we deny that they have any power over us because we can't overcome in one way, shape, or form.
Yeah, for sure.
And death is not failure. Sometimes people feel
Oh,
that, and especially in the medical community, they're taught that way. And then some families, they believe that because of their religious beliefs. And yet, I hear people tell me stories as a bereavement coordinator. Tell me stories about they really struggle to see their loved one decline. They wanted them to get better. But as time went on, they recognized once they died that it was a gift.
yes.
And I've heard people say, please don't misunderstand me, but actually I'm at peace because they're no longer suffering or struggling, or they didn't have the quality of life that they wanted.
Yes.
And so I was able to let go. And I think that's beautiful. It's beautiful to have that awareness and to understand, you know.
It's interesting, depending on how a person was raised and what religion they were raised.
Mm.
Sometimes being at the bedside of someone when they're dying, and when my oldest sister passed away, she had a Catholic service. She hadn't been in a Catholic church for probably 20 years at that point.
Mm.
And both my sister Donna is a Unity minister.
Mm.
And so we went to Canada for my sister's memorial service, and the priest did their thing, and it was a high mass and all the rest of that. And at the end, my sister Donna and I got up there because there was like a pall hanging over the room. And my sister had lung cancer, and she actually died December 31st at 11:30 Canada time, 1994. She didn't take that body into the next year. She was, and she had called me a couple of days before, and she said, "You have to let me go. You're the one that's holding me here." And I said, "Okay." I said, "As much as I don't want to do that, I'm letting you go." Well, to make a long story short, Donna and I got up after the priest did their whole thing, and we had the whole church just cracking up because we told stories about our sister and her personality. And she had 3 walking partners that she went every morning with. And they would always finish their walk by stopping at this restaurant and having breakfast. My sister was losing weight, and they were gaining weight from having pancakes and bacon and eggs and all the rest of it. And they were always so angry at her until she was diagnosed with cancer. Which was why she could eat anything she wanted. She didn't know she had cancer. And at that time, after reading Love, Medicine, and Miracles, the book.
Joan Borsinko, right?
Yeah,
No, Bernie Siegel.
Bernie Siegel. Okay. Yeah.
Bernie Siegel. He said in there that many people do not exhibit any of the symptoms of cancer until they're diagnosed. Until they're told they have cancer. And my sister just had a cold. She kept coughing all the time. Anyway, it's just interesting. Our dad said, I used to wonder why there were 5 kids, why none of you stayed Catholic. But I find myself sometimes, you can take the girl out of the Catholic, but you can't take the Catholic out of the girl. And I revert to form periodically. I do my pleading with God to do what I want in my life. And then I sit back and I go, okay, wait a minute. That's not how we do this anymore. Get back on that train.
I totally get that. Oh my gosh. Coming up as Pentecostal. So I also throw in the speaking in tongues. And then we don't do that. Well, we can't, but because it's all God anyway,
Yes.
It doesn't
Whatever
matter.
yeah, it doesn't matter.
Do you know who Joe Hooper is? He was the minister in Palm Desert, Dr. Joe Hooper. One of my dearest and most wonderful friends. He talked to us he came back to give a talk on a Sunday, and I was listening. Oh no, he was when we had the practitioner symposium at Palm Desert. He talked about how he had gone to a hospital for someone in his congregation who was having an operation, and he was walking down the hallway, and he had his minister stole on, and he had his badge on, and this woman dragged him in the room. You've got to pray. You've got to pray over my husband. It seems like he feels like he wants to die. And Joe wanted to say, but I'm not, I'm not that kind of minister. But he actually, he went in, and the Catholic part of him showed up, and they were Catholic, obviously, but he did a spiritual mind treatment, and the woman was absolutely elated by what he had done for them. And Joe said, you may forget, but you don't forget what the needs of the person are. Probably the same goes for you in your hospice or doula work. Religion doesn't come into play.
Right.
No.
It's the spirituality of the event.
Right.
Exactly.
And if they're more comfortable with Catholic prayers or other prayers, I certainly do that the best that I can.
Yeah.
And, I'm still talk my new thought, but not in a way to convince. It's just in a general way, and try to in a universal way, so that we, that there isn't that sense of separation, like I'm this and you're that. I think it's important to find a common.
So I belong to the Ministers Association locally in Thousand Oaks when I came back to Westlake, and Father Joe Sherbo was a Catholic priest. He was a Franciscan priest, and he was roommates with Richard Rohr at seminary. So these two guys, Richard Rohr, I mean, his work is, if he were my parish priest, I'd still be Catholic. But anyway, Father Joe, every time I led the opening invocation at the meeting, he would just shake his head, and he would say to me, "That's the most wonderful prayer I've ever heard." And so after he'd been coming about a year and a half, he said, "Could you do a prayer for me?" He said, "We'll go into the sanctuary." And he said, "Maybe you could do one of those prayers for me for health and vitality," which I did. And he said, "I want to learn how to do prayer the way you do." And at his memorial service, a year and a half later, he was diagnosed with cancer right when he asked me to pray for him. Father Doug, who did his eulogy, he said, if you have ever been prayed on by Father Joe Sherbo, he said, you've been prayed on. He prayed in a way like I've never heard before. It wasn't by rote. It was always personal. It was always from the heart. And everybody shook their head up and down. And I thought, I gave him John Waterhouse's book, The 5 Steps to Freedom. And it's a book on spiritual mind treatment that is, we use it in all our classes now for a teaching model. So, yeah, it's amazing how many times, the older we get, death and dying shows up in a greater way, doesn't it? It just...
Yeah.
And we're closer to it than we've ever been.
Yeah.
at this age,
We're as young as we're ever going to be, and not as old as we're ever going to be, but right now,
right.
That's a whole other story.
Well, let's switch topics just a little bit, because I want to ask you, you mentioned teaching classes,
Yes.
a writing class, and you also have a book coming out. Talk to us about those things.
Well, the book that's coming out, the title is Off the Yellow Brick Road, which is a play on words, and Back on Again. And each of the stories in the book is an anecdotal memoir. It's a story about sort of redemption, if you will. And every time they got off the 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, and the dog got off the yellow brick road, they got into trouble. And it's kind of like the yellow brick road is the way, capital T, capital W. And each one of us has access to that way. We just might not know it yet. You know, we may still be in the first kingdom, which is the victim consciousness. And anyway, to make a long story short, what I did was I wrote these stories. And then the publisher came back to me just a while ago and said, we want something at the end of each story to give the reader, while the story is interesting, to give the reader, you know, the lesson and the blessing. So I wrote that for each one of the stories. And, you know, one of the stories was I was summarily dismissed from a church that I belonged to. And the whole premise behind that story was don't ever stay where you're not wanted. That's the lesson. But that what you can do is that place where I was not a landing strip. It was a launching pad for the next idea.
Right.
And I didn't see that until a long time afterwards. So being able to write about that lesson and the blessing in the story, now it's back at the publisher, so we'll see what happens after that. I have no idea. And it is, pardon me?
A release date?
I would love to have it done before the end of this year. And what I think probably because I have 3 other books. I have so many stories of situations and circumstances that on the surface appeared dire, and they came to resolution because the person changed their belief about what was happening. It didn't change the happening or the happenstance, whatever was going on, but they stepped back as the observer, which we all have within us. Like when my daughter's godmother tried to commit suicide, she talked about everything that was going wrong in her life. And I said, well, was the observer of that behavior sick or the observer angry? And she said, well, no. And I said, but if you take on the position of the observer of your life, it takes away all the pain of it. And she called me 3 weeks before she actually ended up killing herself. And she said, I can't do what you do. You know, I can't have the attitude that you have because everything just seems too much. And yeah, the blessing that came out of that, I had no idea she had money in trust for me. So $42,000 was the deposit I put on my first condo in Granada Hills. And her picture sits over here on my shelf because she was always afraid she'd be a bag lady, but she's not ever going to be a bag lady because she had me and she had this money that she left. Anyway,
you've been awesome for us.
Yes, thank you so much. And I
would
love to talk more. Unfortunately, or fortunately, we're near the end of this episode. And thank you so much for sharing your presence and your experiences and lessons. I really appreciate it. And I know that our viewers will too.
And we're going to want you back.
Pardon?
We're going to want you back.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. sometimes I think that I blab too much. I just go on and on and on. But I do feel like people can relate to a personal experience, and that's what the book is about, is personal experiences and how, what happened, what I did, and who I am today, kind of thing.
That's great.
Can't wait to read it.
Yep. Good. Thank you for asking me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And please join us again, like and share. Next week, our special guest is Kathy Wilson, and she's an animal chaplain, so that should be interesting. So until next week, this is Divine Science Everywhere, in all, through all, as all, on New Thought Media Network.
New Thought Media Network is excited to present Divine Science Everywhere, Fridays at 2 p.m. Mountain Time and 4 p.m. Eastern. Come explore a modern experience of divine science with Reverend Joy Fletcher, Reverend Jeff Radcliff, and Bishop Durrell Watkins. Join us as we open our eyes to divine science everywhere we look. Fridays on New Thought Media Network.